Ibrahim Traore and his cohorts from Niger and Mali started 2025 by threatening regional integration in West Africa. They pulled out of ECOWAS to set up their own Sahel conference. But ECOWAS and African Union stayed strong in 2025, while the Sahel conference is yet to prove that their policy of isolation is a viable way to do diplomacy in 2025. My name is Enebi Tony. I'm a Ghanaian writer who lives in the US. On this channel, I talk about geopolitics from the perspective of an African. So what I'll be doing is from December 8th to December 20th, every weekday, I'll be doing my top 10 most important geopolitical issues that happen on the continent of Africa, from threats to democratic norms in Africa, to the setting up of data centers in Africa, from Trump's tariffs effect on trade in Africa, to AFTA's effect on trade in Africa. We'll be focusing on governmental decisions and policies, as well as individuals doing things that are important to the growth of Africa as a continent. So subscribe to this channel if you are interested in seeing 2025 in reverse. We'll call this Big Africa 2025. So let's get right into it. Let's start with issue number 10. We are doing the, reverse. We'll start with 10 and get to 1. Issue number 10 is the rise of tyranny in Africa in 2025. So, I think this started in 2020. After COVID hit, the whole world's economy was in shambles. Everybody from everywhere in the world was feeling that their lives had no value because there was no money in the pocket, right? And in countries like Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa, countries that have strong history of democracy, this led to protests. In my home country of Ghana, we protested our government, and our government shamefully responded by putting people in jail. Some friends of mine, some who are lawyers, were put in jail because they led protests against the government in 2024. In Kenya, there was protests. In South Africa, white farmers also went to the US Embassy to protest earlier this year because of a law that was passed. What I'm saying is that the threat or the reality of Africa youth feeling like they don't have choices is real. What is bad is this has driven African youth into the hands of the same demagogues and tyrants who have terrorized our countries for a very long time. So I'll start with the old guards and then we'll come to the new guards. So there were a series of sham elections in Africa this year. In La Côte d'Ivoire, Alassane Ouattara ran for a 4th term and won. This was after he got the most viable candidate disqualified in the elections. So Alassane Ouattara won the election, but he came at the expense of bending democratic norms. Alassane Ouattara have been in office. This is 4th term. Really, really shameful. And number 2, we'll go to the big one, Paul Biya of Cameroon. Paul Biya said until he sees progress in Cameroon, he's not going to resign from office. Guess what? He's been in office from 1982, which means that if there is no progress in Cameroon, he is the reason why there's no progress in Cameroon. But he used the fact that there's no progress in Cameroon as a reason to run for, I don't remember how many terms he's running right now. He's been in office since 82. Cameroon has a system where you run for 7 years. And so 83 people declared their desire to run against Paul Biya. And the country's election commission approved only of 13. There were, I believe, 8 women who were willing to run against him, and only one of those women was approved to run against him. And later on, the woman who was approved to run against Paul Biya was also disqualified from running. So 12 people ran against him, and he won a majority of 54% of the valid vote cast. That election is clearly not a credible election. There is the issue in Uganda, but I would touch on this, but I will save it for another issue in future. In future, we are going to talk about the rise of female leaders in Africa. So we are going to compare Tanzania and Namibia. So that will happen in future. I just brought up Tanzania because there was another sham election in Tanzania where the president won and remained in office. But now we've had people who've been in office for a very long time causing chaos in Africa and somehow still manage to stay in power. And now we have new guards who are also following the playbook of the old guards. A big one is Ibrahim Traore. Ibrahim Traore came to office claiming to be a transitional leader who is going to hand over to a civilian power within 2 years or so. And he's been in office since 2022, I believe. So he did not hand over power. And he's, in this year, even made matters worse because he dissolved the Electoral Commission in Burkina Faso, his home country. So Ibrahim Traore, I know he's popular among African youth because he says the right things. He blames Western powers for the fact that Burkina Faso is going through hard times, right? But if history have taught me anything, it's the fact that Ibrahim Traore is not the solution to the problems of Burkina Faso or Africa. Ibrahim Traore is definitely a symptom of the problems of Africa, and he's going to continue being that. Anytime people come to office saying that they are going to do something and get to power and do the direct opposite of what they said we're going to do, that is the biggest red flag. But the story of Ibrahim Traore, the leaders in Niger and Mali, makes me realize something that I was wrong about. When I was a kid, I wasn't a kid, I was a teen. How old was I? It doesn't matter. In 2009, US President at the time, Obama, came to Ghana. It was his first trip to Africa, and it was one of his first trips as president. And Obama, in his speech in the Parliament of Ghana, said, Africa does not need strong men, it needs strong institutions. I disagreed with Obama when he said that because I was like, institutions are led by men. So if you have weak men, your institutions would be weak. But now in 2025, I understood what Obama said in 2009. What he meant was that in order for your institutions to grow, you needed the institution themselves to be able to withstand the threat from strong men. If Tanzania, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Uganda had strong institutions, they would have been able to weed out the strong men who are threatening democratic norms in these places. So yes, Obama was right about that. I was wrong for disagreeing with Obama at the time. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is that in 2025, if there is one thing we are going to take away from it, is the fact that demagoguery is still a viable political option in Africa. People who can talk smoothly but don't back up their talk with real action still manage to get to positions of power in Africa. And that is a threat to democracy in Africa. That is a threat to lives in Africa. That is proof of tyranny in Africa. And I am worried about how this will play out in 2026 because from 1970 to the early 1990s, military rulership was huge in Africa. African countries who believed that getting independence and weeding out colonialism was going to be a ticket to economic boom were disappointed. So they turned to military rulers for solution. And for about 30 years, these military rulers did what military rulers do, terrorize the people. So democracy started rising in Africa from the mid 1990s. Ghana was in 1992, which was early 1990s, but all over Africa from mid 1990s onwards, democracy has been on the rise. In the 2020s, democracy is under threat in Africa. That is something we should be worried about. And so I thought that that should be issue number 10 that I should address on Big Africa 2025. In the next episode, we are going to talk about another issue, issue number 9. I'll talk to you later.